Welcome back to Basin Motorsports. So today I'm going to show you the process to install a set of outer hood louvers from Race Louvers. Now the vehicle we're going to be working on is a 1980 Ford Mustang. This is going to be an original hood that fits on the 79 to 82 Ford Mustangs or the Foxbodies. The hood louvers we're going to install are the RS Street trim. Now Race Louvers has three different versions of these hood louvers. The RS Street trim are based on a mostly street car with a little bit of autocross. There is an RS track version which is mostly autocross to some open track racing. And then there is the RS Extreme, and those are for pure race cars that are only open tracked. Maximum cooling, maximum downforce. Now inside the box, when you order your outer hood louvers, what you're going to get is one complete set of hood louvers, a set of install instructions, a set of cutting templates, a set of aluminum 3/16 rivets. Now note these are going to be black powder coated to match the louvers I'm putting on, which also are a black powder coating. And lastly, you'll get a set of decals from Race Louvers for your car. Now we're going to go through the instructions step by step, showing you each piece. The setup between a center and a side louver itself is going to be the same. So if you're doing both sets at the same time, you will only have to do the setup once. But if you're not, you're doing them separately different times, or you're adding on, I'll show you the setup from start to finish of how to do just the individual set here. Now note down in the description of the video, I have a link directly to Race Louvers, to these products themselves and to their site. I'll also note down in the description any tools that I've been using on this installation, whether it's a pair of scissors, painter's tape, markers, etc. Everything you need will be in the description to do everything from Race Louvers. So the first step of the process is we want to start figuring out where our templates are going to go before we even think about cutting. So in order to do that, I need to reference the back side of the radiator. So I'm going to go ahead and lift the hood up, use the prop rod, or if you have gas struts, get the hood raised so that we can look in the engine bay. So next I'm going to use some painter's tape just to put a strip down the edge of the fender. One, it helps from scuffing the edge, and two, I can then look down here at the back side of the radiator. Now if you've noticed, I've put in a mark roughly in the back side of the radiator. It says RAD, so I know where this ends at the fender. Now I can come to the other side of the fender and do the same thing. Back of the radiator comes to right there, there's a mark and RAD. That way I know end to end where the radiator is. Now with both points defined out on the fenders, you can take a piece of string and tape it, run it across your marks there. So as you can see, the string runs right across the radiator mark and goes all the way across the hood to the other side mark. Now what this tells you is where the back of your radiator sits in reference to your hood. Now you can just use a simple marker and put a mark across the tape at the front of the side vent, and this is the back of the radiator there. So just a simple mark across your string on both sides, and then we can move to the next step. Now you can use a tape measure just to simply mark from the base of the windshield right here all the way down to 20 inches. You're just going to put a piece of tape down and a nice line. What this defines is that this is the target spot for your side vent. Between here, where the back of the radiator is, to 20 inches from the windshield, in this range is your sweet spot for your side louver. Now once you know your sweet area that you're going to be able to mount this, you're just going to lay down some extra tape in there. That way you can go ahead and mark on that, but it's just 4 or 5 pieces across and it's running front to back. Just makes it easy both sides to be able to mark and lay out everything there. So the next step in the process is to get out a small pair of scissors, your templates, and you're going to cut these out. So the goal is to get essentially a pattern of the outside of the vent. Now in order to check that this vent pattern is correct, you can use this on your vent itself. You can simply just place it over the vent to make sure that it fits. You notice the outer edge between the white paper and the black vent line up perfectly, so you know this template is correct for these vents. When I cut the hood to this template, the vents will pop right in there. So once you have your templates in place on your side vent area, you know that your beginning and end target sweet spot is somewhere in here. Next, we're going to find where a 2-inch spot is from the back of the radiator. So remember, this is the mark for the radiator. We're going to then use a tape measure and go 2 inches back from there. You can just mark it on either side of the fender and then use your string across. You know that now there's a 2-inch line at the back of the radiator right there. Now, to get the maximum amount of heat out of there, you want to put your vents approximately 2 inches behind this line right here. So on your 2-inch mark, your side vents should come in roughly at the front. If you're doing just side vents, you can do that. If you are doing a set of side and centers, you may think, that kind of looks off. So you can go ahead and move these back to be in a V pattern. So when you look at it from the side, you'll notice that the line comes straight across. The goal is to have this balanced between the radiator and the shock tower. So once you think you have an approximate spot for this to go in where it forms a nice V, you can then open the hood, double check to where your shock tower is, to where your radiator is, and you can always make a mark down here on your tape of halfway to understand if that lines up with the halfway center of your vent. All right, so once you have your side vent marked out, here are the things you want to kind of keep in mind. I used the string that I had running cross car on the hood itself to kind of define out my line. So if I show you a top view, you can see my templates side to side between the center and side do match. Now, if you're only putting in side pieces here, the side vents, you don't have a center vent to reference from. Here's just an idea. So this is the back of the radiator line, the 2-inch line. This inner corner is 2 1/4 inches. Just for reference, in case you're only doing the side vents. That way you kind of see where it should be placed at. And if you notice as I scroll around here, you know that my target hot zone or my sweet spot was from here to here. So you can see it's kind of centered in there. Now, I did raise the hood up and show you that the front of my strut tower is right here and the center of my strut tower is right here, just for reference. Note that when I cut out this center portion here, all this metal is gone. The front of the strut tower is going to be right in this area over here. When I cut out this metal, I don't have to worry about anything hitting that strut tower. If this is placed too far back, you always have a mass air meter on these, you have an air filter, anything like that. So you just know that everything in here is going to be in good shape, and I'll show you in a minute once I have the other side on how everything sits in comparison to what metal you're about to take out. Okay, so here's the opposite side now put on. Again, if I show you a top view, you can see the string keeps them nicely in line together so they look visually good. And you got to remember, heat when it comes in the radiator here is not going to go here. It's going to just disperse out this way in a smooth pattern. So if you put it, it's not going to turn 90 degrees to come in here and go up. So it's going to come in and go up that way. So it's all in good to have it space back just a little bit. Now this is the same spacing as the other side. I've checked with a tape measure. One thing to note that you have on this hood, this slight channel here where you've got a curve down coming in flat and then a curve going up. Make sure the outside of your template is not on these curves going up. You want to make sure it stays on the flat. The reason is if you have to put in metal and it sits somewhere on this curve, it's going to put a space or a gap between the surface of your template and your hood louver metal and the hood on the hood metal surface. So make sure that the curve is outside of your spot here. That's why it just goes flat to flat, and that way you don't have to worry about any odd gaps. Now once you have your spacers, your templates in place, you can then mark the corners with a marker or a Sharpie in that, and then remove the template and then just use a straight line like a T-square. I'll show you what I've got. I've got a T-square there that's long enough that will bridge between point to point. Once this is out of the way, you'll see I've got 4 points here, and I'll just use the T-square to give me a straight line there, run a mark down, and then that gives me my box. to show me exactly where it's going to be cut out. All right, with everything marked on the hood now is the time to lift the hood up, double check what is going to be sitting directly under open vents now, basically allowing rain or anything else in if you're doing a street car, and just double check that everything in there that you want to be exposed is okay to be exposed. And then at that point, it's time to remove the hood and start cutting. Now at this point, there is no damage to stopping the process. Whether you're doing a center or a side kit, you may decide, I don't really want to do this. I don't like the look of it or something else. The templates I've used today that came in the kit from Race Louvers are available on their website for download. They come in as a PDF form. You can download them and then they can print them out on a scale of 1 to 1. If you don't have a printer, someplace like Staples or anything else that does online printing to send an order to, you can send it there on a scale of 1 to 1, have them printed, and then you can do the same process up to this point. Put down the tape, put down the templates, everything else, get to that point to decide, yes, this is exactly what I'd want to do, and then you can order your parts if you're totally unsure about if you want to go through this and actually cut your hood up. So I assume at this point you've said, absolutely, we're going forth. It's time to put some holes in the hood. So now the instructions say to take the hood off, and I totally agree with that. That allows you easy access to all 4 sides of the hood versus just the front 3 or the 2 sides in the front. And that way you don't risk cutting or splicing or anything else inside the engine bay. So go ahead, take the hood off, set it outside or in a space you can cut in. Set it on some sawhorses. Let's get ready to put some holes in the hood. All right, so now that you have your hood off your vehicle, you can now take it outside or to wherever you're going to cut the holes in the hood for the Race Louver heat extractors. Now, if your hood is like mine, you have a insulator on the back side of the hood. Now, maybe aftermarket or OEM, but you're gonna want to at least recess and cut off the pieces where the grills and the heat extractors are gonna go, or you may just choose to completely take it off altogether. In my case, I'm just gonna go ahead and take out the pieces where the heat extractor louvers are gonna go, and then that way I'll change from there as I need to. All right, so before you start cutting your side grills or side openings here for your heat louvers, the thing you're gonna wanna do is drill in a 3/8 inch hole in each of these corners. Now you can go a little bit wide outside the sharp corner there, but the hole is going to stop crack propagation. So sheet metal will flex over time, and what happens on a sharp corner, it tends to crack, which means it will start to come out from the edge. Putting in a round hole stops the crack from forming, and that way it's going to be in good shape. So on each of these, on the driver's and the passenger side, on the side louvers, you're then going to put in 4 holes into this corner, 4 holes here in each of the corners, and then you can start worrying about doing your cutting. So there are the 4 corners done. Now you can do a different choice. I just did just the pilot on this drill bit, and then I did a unibit. So you can kind of do a unibit the whole time if you want to. Just whatever works to get down to a 3/8 of an inch, but you can kind of see right there on the corner, right in the edge, but at least it's not going all the way through. All right, once you have your 4 corners drilled out, it's now time to cut. So when I cut these side louvers openings, I want to stay to the outside of my line. So this is the minimum line, and the directions say to actually cut about an 1/8 inch out from the line. So when I cut, I'm going to start in the corners, stay outside the line just a little bit, just an 1/8 inch, and come all the way down from end to end. And then I can do that, stay to the outside there. Now it's better to have a slightly larger opening than needed than a slightly smaller, because you still have to get the vent down in there. So going a little wider is fine. You have a little bit of an edge. Remember, you have an inch lip on the outside here, and that'll hide any of that opening. And having it open means you can actually move this around a little bit to make sure it's perfectly fit before you drill the mounting holes. So once you're ready there, step back, double check. Make sure there's nothing underneath that you can catch with your cutoff wheel or whatever you're going to use, and then you can start doing it. Now on this, for the sawhorses, I ended up moving them out away from the cutting area, and I took out the blanket that was underneath there when I had it upside down. I took that out completely. So now we're ready to get the cutoff wheel there with my compressor and get ready to go. All right, so it's finally time to start cutting on the side louver openings. Now with this, I'm just going to use a cutoff wheel between the holes and stay to the outside of the black line. Go zip this way, that way, and around. Now as you can see in the far corner, I have some welding magnets there. What I'm doing there is just cutting 2 edges and then placing a magnet over the corner, and that way it keeps this corner that's freshly cut stable. So as I cut on each side of a corner, I'm just using a magnet in place. That way it helps keep this from falling through, and it also helps it keep from vibrating while I'm cutting it. It's nice and stable. So by the time I have 3 cut, that will mean I'm down to my last corner. At the end, I can then just use the center magnet and the big one just to basically pull it out, and I'll be completely done. Time to do both sides before we flip it over to deburr it. All right, so once you have both sides of your side louvers opened up on the hood, you can then work to flip the hood over to get rid of the inner structure. So with these, just flip them on. I would put the blanket back on, turn it back over that way you don't worry about scratching the top surface, and then you can worry about recessing these back. Remember, 1 inch on the sides, 1 inch on the back, and 2 inches on the front. Now with the hood flipped over, you can clearly see where your side louvers need to be recessed at. So again, we're going to do 1 inch to the side, which would be roughly in here, 1 inch to the side, which will be roughly right about where that white line is. If you go anything further, what you're going to start cutting into is the base here where it touches, and I want this structure, so I'm just going to cut right here where it's gapped, where it kind of goes up and over. So cut that, cut that. There's nothing in the front to block, nor is there anything in the rear, and that goes for the both sides. So you've just got a little bit on the inside to cut, a little bit on the outside. Again, I'm going to do right there in the radius, right where it comes up away from the hood. And then again, nothing on the front, nothing on the rear to cut for your sides. So go ahead and use a cutoff wheel there. If you need help spacing, you can just use something like this. This is just a plastic trim clip puller. And that's just put in between the inner, which is this, the outer. That way it keeps that spacing. That way I don't have to worry about cutting through the outer layer into the top surface. All right, so there are the openings for the side louvers. And now you can see without the inner bracing in the way, everything is cleaned up. Now these edges I've already gone through with a die grinder and cleaned up. And just remember, these are going to be sharp metal after they're cut. So clean them up with either like a sandpaper, a file, a die grinder, anything you want. And I've done the same on the edges here. Now it's time to take this and we're going to flip it back over, try to fit our louvers in there and to see how everything fits. All right, so the side louvers dropped directly in place. Everything fit great. The templates were exactly perfect, and I cut a little wide, as I said. Now these are actually fit, so when you go in, they will drop in, and then this front wicker right here is actually right on the front edge. So if you push too far behind, you'll see that it starts to lift up. You want to drop this in, and then put it right on edge. Now you can balance these side to side. Fortunately, these actually fit within this channel. They're made to exactly fit between the radiuses on both sides. So all I have to do is just balance it at the front, double check my side gap either way, and then I can start to measure my mounting holes, put a pin through here on the mounting, and put a dot there, and then use a 7/32 drill bit to drill each hole for the mounting. All right, with everything drilled, now you can see I'm just test fitting to make sure all the rivets actually go in the holes. All right, now with all of the holes verified to go through with all the rivets sit flat to the louvers themselves just by moving some holes, just elongating as you need to, just a smidge. Everything sits flat. Now, you can take at this point, you can flip it over and double check that there are no burrs on the backside of all these drilled holes. You can also at this time recheck all of these openings here. Now you don't have to do it previously, you can do it now if you want to do all of it on the back side. I just did it to split up just to make sure I didn't cut my fingers, but maybe I'm accident prone and that's okay. Once you're good there, peel off all the tape, and then you can clean the hood, make sure everything's good, and get ready to go put the hood back on the car. Okay, with everything cleaned up and the tape taken off, you can see that everything is good. The center vents fit very well. Everything fits well there. No real scratches. Everything looks good. Now I'm going to set the hood aside for a second, and then I will go ahead and bolt it on the car. The last piece, we'll be putting louvers on the hood, but the hood is going to be on the car at that point. Now, one final note here before you put the hood on the car: if you're worried about corrosion, you can take a spray can of just something like black, spray a little bit on the tip, put the tip right to the edge of the can, and then you can rub it on the cutout openings here and on the back side of the drilled holes. That way you'll have a painted surface there that won't have to worry about corrosion if you're worried in about it. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and install it that way if you're not worried about covering the exposed metal. So now with the hood installed back on the car, you can see where there's going to be any contact points potentially. You can take your louvers and set them down inside each of the cavities and just ensure that they are not going to touch anything down below. They're not going to hit a belt, any of your radiator reservoirs, or anything else, mass air meter, etc. Alright, so there's your finished product with the grills completely on the hood now. Now there's a couple different options. Race Louvers does give you a set of rivets for each of the sets. Whether it's a center or a side, they'll give you 3/16 aluminum rivets that are black powder coated to match. Now because my car is vinyl wrapped, it is going to use fasteners. Now these are a 10-24 button head screw. These are black powder coat also, and they are a 1/2 inch long. Now they've got a threaded nylon nut, lock nut on the back, but they will bolt down. Now everything else looks really good here. You can see they're nicely form-fitting down to the sheet metal all the way across, and they will do fantastically to allow heat to escape, plus add extra downforce because there's no pressure in the hood, and everything is going to be good. Now, like I said previously, the templates, before you cut this, if you decide you want to try them on your car to see what it's going to look like or how they're going to fit, you can download those as a PDF off of racelouvers.com. You can look at each individual car itself and the options available. The templates are available for download. Remember to print them in a 1x1 scale. That way they will be the correct size for your car. Now everything I've used here between the kit itself and all the tools I've used along the way, I will put down in the description. You guys can go down there and check out, go to racelouvers.com. Directly to the louvers here that I've got, which are the RS Street trim. You can look at all of those for Ford Mustangs or any other vehicle they have available on their website. If they don't have one, if it's not something in a universal size, contact them directly, tell them what you're looking for, and they could probably design up exactly what you need to fit the exact car you're working on. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching here on Basin Motorsports. We'll see you next time. Happy driving.